All right, looks like I've already enabled that feature. So welcome, my name is Rachel Potter. I am the president for the executive board for our Open Education Resources Special Interest Group, and we are very glad to have you here today. The Open Education Resources SIG is a special interest group that falls under the umbrella of the other ABAI groups, and our mission is to promote adoption, creation, and dissemination of open educational resources in behavior analysis, and also to promote other resources that might be open access. As part of that and aligned with our values, we do not charge a fee for any of our continuing education events. It is important to us that these be accessible and free of charge to those who would like to come and learn alongside of us. If you are interested in joining our special interest group, it is free to join. We do not have any membership fees, which is unusual and not typical of a lot of the other special interest groups. And I would encourage you to visit us. Dr. Howard has put the link in the chat, but it's openbehaviorsig.org. We offer continuing ed events and opportunities to share with like-minded folks that have similar interests and goals. And so we would certainly welcome you to join us there. Other logistical matters before we get into introducing our presenters that we're delighted to host today. We will be verifying attendance in a couple of ways so that you can receive your certificates if you're in need of that for your continuing education. I would ask that you type into the chat, and you can do this at any time now, your first and last name as it appeared when you registered and as you would like it on your certificate. By typing your first and last name, that will serve as your check-in. So please go ahead and do that now early on. I'll give one more prompt in case there's folks who slip in or missed that part of the directions as well. At the end of the session, there will be two things you need to do to check out. One is to do that a second time, and we will prompt you when it is time to do that. And additionally, we will put a link to an evaluation for the session in the chat box. Completing that link is what will trigger checking on our little roster here to make sure you checked in and checked out. And if you checked in, checked out, and completed that evaluation within a week, probably much sooner, you will have a copy of your certificate. And if there are any concerns or issues or edits that are needed, reach out to me and I will happily make those for you. The continuing education credit is sponsored by Mary Baldwin University, where I am faculty. And we are delighted to, again, be able to do that at no charge for you as well. So allow me to introduce our speakers. Again, if you have not yet put your first and last name as you would like it to appear on your certificate in the chat, please do that. We have two wonderful presenters with us today. We have Dr. Barb Kaminski, who's currently the clinical director of Green Box ABA, as well as an instructor for the ABA program at George Mason University, the co-founder of Uncomfortable X, a behavior analysis forum for conversation and learning surrounding uncomfortable situations in our discipline, its history, and its ongoing growing pains. She is a BCBA-D and licensed behavior analyst here in Virginia, where I am as well. Has a PhD from West Virginia University, postdoc and faculty experience through Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. We're also delighted to welcome her co-presenter today, Kate Fox. Kate's worked in the field of applied behavior analysis since 2011, completed Master of Science degree from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and has been a BCBA since 2015. Kate's main areas of interest are acceptance and commitment training, ACT, as well as supervision and relational frame theory. Little tongue twister there. So I will turn it over to them, but I will remind everybody, if you have questions, please post those in the chat. I think there's going to be some interaction during today's session as well, so follow those prompts as they come. And again, if you have not put your first and last name in the chat box to check in, please do that now. And I will mute myself and begin to make some attendance notes and pass the baton to our presenters.
Fantastic. So while I'm taking care of sharing the screen here, I'm going to give a shout out to some other West Virginia folks I see in the room. So hey there. Hey, Jen. Hey, Scott. And Jill Scotty. And I think those were the ones I saw from y'all. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Howard and Dr. Potter for this opportunity to share this content with you tonight. This presentation was originally planned to be the third part of a three-part series that I did for Uncomfortable X. And then Kate and I pivoted, and it was accepted for presentation at ABA-I, and then COVID hit, and it's been sitting over there in the corner for a while. So we are very grateful to OER for allowing us to bring it into the light here tonight. And we're especially happy to be doing that through OER because we share their values of making things available free of charge here. All right. So I would like to, y'all seeing this full screen, by the way? I was making sure that that's displaying. Okay. All right. I want to begin by giving you an idea of what to expect tonight. Our first underlying premise is that since the BACB introduced a set of ethical guidelines, which is now codified, as a profession, we have often approached ethical problem solving as if the BACB code is synonymous with professional ethics, not just a component of it. I have some thoughts about why that's the case, and some of them will likely emerge during the presentation. But rather than that approach, we would like to add to the growing number of voices that note that ethical behavior and problem solving of ethical dilemmas within ABA is a product of both the BACB ethics code, which represents our codified, keep it going. There we go, represents our codified and enforceable requirements. And in addition, our own personal ethics and values. And so throughout this presentation, in order to emphasize that being an ethical behavior analyst is a combination of both things, when I speak about the BACB code and when Kate speaks about it, we will refer to it as such. For example, if there is a behavior that is not in line with the BACB code, then we'll refer to that as a code violation, not an ethics violation. Okay. So starting from this premise, we will argue that the BACB code is over-applied to situations, to those kinds of situations which make us uncomfortable because they conflict with our personal values, not necessarily because they are a violation of the code. And through analysis of scenarios, we will model an approach to discerning whether the things triggering the ethical radar are actually code violations, personal ethics violations, or some combination of those. Finally, we'll provide some tools that may be useful for identifying our values and how they inform our ethical decision-making. Let's begin with the premise that not every uncomfortable situation that triggers our ethical radar is related to the BACB ethics code. You know what? That's true, and that's okay. Every one of us has personal values, and every one of us has our own personal ethics. And it's okay that we have those. I mean, it's expected that we'll have those, but it's also okay that some of those things are separate from what is codified in the ethics code. That is, we can hold ethical positions. We can have values that are not a part of the code. Ethical positions can be, those ethical positions can be separate. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how we can separate some of those things out. But those things are things that can, those personal values, those personal ethics can also be things that come into conflict with situations that we encounter as practitioners. And that's where we're really going to focus tonight, on those situations that where our personal values come to conflict in the situation we encounter. And how we, in those situations, again, for a variety of reasons, are going to have this tendency to over-apply and look for and search through the code, trying to find things that apply when it's really these other things, and it's okay for those other things to be guiding our decisions as well. Now, the truth is that current problem-solving approaches, including the one that's provided by the board, do acknowledge that personal ethics are a factor. Right? So if that's true, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that's most often where the discussion about personal values and ethics ends. We're told that we should be taking into account what our personal values and what those personal things we bring into the situation, what those things contribute to our decision making. But that's where it ends, just this acknowledgement that that should be true. How to and how to discern the impact and to account for those effects of those personal ethics is frequently minimized, right? When we're presented with a dilemma, the idea is we just go straight to the code and we find the things in the code that are affecting this, and that's it. We don't really necessarily even need to put that much focus over there on personal stuff. And when you throw in on top of that, that the code is enforceable, that the code is what you need to know for the exam, and that the code is seemingly black and white and with answers. I say seemingly because we should be engaging in problem solving, even with respect to the code. And the fact that everyone's personal values and their personal ethics are, well, they're personal, right? Which complicates things even further. Then the question becomes, how do we teach people to be able to take into account their personal values when they're working through these situations? Now, I know that when we're talking about things that affect us personally and professionally, and that we have a lot of experience with, it can be difficult to step back and see a point of view, see this different kind of point of view. So let's look at this other situation that has some parallels. Let's say that Sarah is a pre-med student who has been assigned to work in a research lab at a medical school. The research in that lab involves innovative treatment for diabetes, and experiments are being conducted with dogs in this laboratory. Sarah feels uncomfortable. Something is triggering her. And the thing that's triggering her is that she does not believe that animals should be used in research. She does a little bit of background checking and she learns that the research has been approved by the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, and it adheres to all AMA ethical codes. So in this scenario, is this an AMA ethics code violation? Nope, it isn't, right? There is definitely, they've run this through their IACOC. It is adhering to all of the different elements within the AMA code. They're solid. But is it a personal ethics violation for Sarah? Yeah, it is. Sarah has a value that involves whether or not animals should be treated in a particular way, whether they should be involved in research. So in this case, Sarah may take steps based on her personal ethics as opposed to the ethics code that is available through the AMA. And that's really what we're talking about here, that there is this ability to sometimes separate out those kinds of situations. Now, granted, most of our ethical dilemmas lie here in this overlap of the Venn diagram, right? Most of the time, when we're faced with situations, it's going to be right there. It's going to be something that the code specifically applies to. It's going to be something that is also triggering our personal ethics, because those two things very, very frequently overlap, and they should very overlap, right? But sometimes but sometimes they're over there, just in that little slice of the Venn diagram that's only related to our personal ethics and values. And the problem that arises is when we try to take those and we try to push them into that center part, that overlapping part of the Venn diagram. So that tends to lead in our premise here to some over application of the BACB's ethical codes to situations. And when we do that, and we're going to try and make this case a little bit later as we go through some of our value work as well, we can end up still feeling fairly unresolved about how we've solved a particular situation because we haven't really addressed how it affects our personal values as well. Now, if all of that is true, what do we do? What do we do? Because, you know, every individual is different. Every individual has their own personal ethics, their own personal values. And so specifically teaching people how to do that integration and how, not just integration, but separation, right, is really difficult. And we believe that one of the first steps of being able to do that is being able to tell the difference between enforceable code violations and those things that are conflicts with our personal values. And being able to do that requires a solid understanding of what is in the code and a solid understanding of what isn't in the code. And as behavior analysts, something that we should already know, which is practice applying both of those things. And unfortunately, the one that people are most often taught in ethics classes is that solid understanding of what is in the code. And I'll tell you that I stand convicted, I own it, I've done it when I've taught ethics, right? Focused very much on this is the code, this is what you do with the code, and not really expanded that out into talking about values in as much as I should. So with that background, let's practice asking ourselves, is this scenario a code violation? And so I'm going to pass this over to Kate, who's going to lead you through a variety of scenarios. Kate?
Okay, we're going to attempt to use the chat for this. We will see how that goes. You can go to the next slide. What I'd like you to do, I'll read this, and then I would like you to type in the chat if you think that this is a code violation or not. So an ABA center offers you a job. When you read over your contract, you discover that it contains a non-compete clause. It stipulates that you cannot work for another ABA company within a 40-mile radius of this one for 2 years after ending your employment. And I would like to mention, we pulled these from, most of these we found on very recent discussions on social media. And we actually saw this one, we saw a discussion last week that evoked the ethics code. So we want to keep things timely and relevant to you. All right, so consensus here is I'm getting a lot of no's, which, okay, good. Hard to enforce, just a jerk move, short, yep. No, but crappy, maybe enforceable or not. Cool, yeah, so yeah, this is not an ethics, this is not a code violation. But also we see that, like, a lot of us have strong opinions about this. This might be against our personal values. We might choose to not work somewhere that that has a non-compete clause, but also, I mean, but there is as far as the board is concerned, generally this is not a situation that's actionable for the code. If something illegal happened, that could be different, but just this is a basic non-compete clause. So cool. Okay, we can go to let's go to the next one. Okay, you just started a new position at an ABA agency. A lot of these are new jobs, by the way. In your first week, went away. Okay, in your first week, yes, it's back, thanks. You discover that your company only takes clients who are available for full-time comprehensive services, does not provide lower intensity focused services. Is this a code violation? And actually, we're going to assume in this, upon reading it again, we're going to assume that that these clients are in need of comprehensive services on this slide. What do you think? So we're getting a lot of no's, we're getting questionable practice, sus. I really like the I like all of the extra comment. The extra comments here really show, like, kind of showing what we're talking about here. Like, no, but not aligned to solid values. Not really how services should be offered, right? That statement is absolutely, sounds like it's attached to a value, which is that's good. That we all have values that we should be taking into account when we make decisions with where we're working. So yeah, so again, no, this is not a code violation, provided that the agency is upfront about expectations. They're making recommendations based on clinical need. Like, it's, yeah, it's kind of gross. I don't know that I would necessarily want to work there, but yeah, and Christine, like Dr. Barthold, like what we see a lot online is that people start to, yeah, and silly because like the markets, that's another good point. Like people love to say, well, we have a code of ethics that like helps us decide what to do. But maybe we need a little bit different, because I think we need a little more in addition to the ethics code for some of these situations, because we all have, like, these feelings are coming out, and I'm just asking you yes or no questions. Let's go to the next slide.
Yep. Before we do, yeah. No, I just want to throw in real quick. I can only stay quiet for so long. Hello. I do want to throw in that, like, obviously I'm not sure that this crowd really needs this presentation, right? Based on your answers. But that these are things that, we drew these scenarios from things that we were seeing on social media in various places, in Reddit and Facebook, and things that were posted as questions to other forums, like state organizations and things like that. So these questions are out there, and there are people who are seriously struggling with how to deal with these situations, and other people who are specifically providing them solutions to these kind of situations based on violations of code, right? They're doing that. If you go through and you look at comments and then, well, blah, blah, blah applies to that. Like, does it though, right? And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be problem solving or feel that these things are not good. It's okay to feel uncomfortable with these things and to want to do something differently. It's just that you don't necessarily have to take that code over there and try and squish it in, because you can make decisions without that. based on other things. But Kate and I were talking about this before, before you all got here, about this particular kind of scenario, and the fact that these kinds of things aren't enforceable with organizations, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. That in particular with organizations that are not run specifically by those who are credentialed, and what kinds of situations that creates for us as a profession. So, but that's all I'm going to say about that for now. I'm going to let.
Don't spoil it. Okay. So,
I just realized that wasn't the slide we were talking about.
No.
So.
Okay. So slightly different situation. We have another new job. Oh, again, a lot of things come up at new jobs. And you're assigned to write a treatment plan for an intake. And your supervisor insists that you recommend 40 hours of therapy. Your assessment doesn't indicate that they need 40 hours of therapy. If you do this, is this a code violation? There we go. Okay, we found the code violation. Yes. Okay, great. Right. We need to recommend treatment intensity based on clinical needs. Yes, and fraud. Okay. Okay. We need to recommend treatment intensity based on clinical needs and not other factors such as funding availability. So, yep, we found one of the code violations. Okay. Let's go to the next one. All right, so here's the one that here is our we've been seeing this a lot. You receive a notice that your ABA center, which is owned by a private equity firm, I'm getting some feelings already on this one, not a BCBA, is closing effective immediately. All of the center's clients will lose services. Is this a code violation? Okay, interesting. Not for the ABA center, right? Yep. So, yep, there you go. So it is not. This is, unfortunately, we're looking at a gray area. We're looking at an area that is not governed by the code, because when you have people investing in something who are not professionally certified through your organization, they're not. Yes, there you go. Let's see. Yep, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, so yes, there are things with transitions that we need. Okay, so we cannot just drop a client. Barb, you look like you want to say something.
No, no, you're good. Of course I want to say things. I want lots of things.
I can see you over there. Oh, Barb. Okay.
But this was the part of the thing that I was alluding to in the previous slide, and that's this issue that organizations, particularly ones that are not owned and managed by certified individuals, do not have to adhere to the BCBA code, right? And the ramifications of what that implies for our profession and how how services are delivered is really something that needs to be addressed more directly. And I'm not entirely sure who should be addressing that. And I appreciate the work of some non-BACB organizations that have started to take up the mantle in looking at some of those kinds of issues. But it is definitely something that puts a lot of BCBAs into a situation where they feel like they are engaging in a code violation. because of the behaviors of the organization that they are working for. And again, that is, while that, if it were that individual who was doing that, like saying, yeah, no, bye, and just leaving all their clients high and dry and not taking any measures to transition them to another BCBA, et cetera, then yeah, that would be definitely a code violation for that BCBA. But the fact that it's some other entity that's doing that, right, makes it creates this situation for that BCBA. And so it's a problem, y'all, that we need to kind of figure out. So you ready to move on, Kate?
Well, just real quick, we've got a couple comments I would like to resolve. Yes, first of all, yes, there are good PEs. Second, yes, Robin, yeah. So the issue that we're seeing in the chat is that if a client is discharged unethically, you're the BCBA on record, which is a good point.
It is, and I do want to clarify that I'm not saying that all PAs or organizations or entities that are owned by non-BCBAs behave in unethical ways. That is not one of the controversial things I want to say tonight, because that's obviously not true, right? But it is. But that does not make the fact that those organizations are not bound to that code in any way not true. I mean, that is definitely true. They are not. And I think that we do know what happens when there's not some sort of watchdog organization that applies to what you do. It allows for these situations to arise. And you're right? If you are the person on record, quote unquote, on record, when a client is with an organization, that organization, the client is that organization's client, not your personal client. And I know you may be the person on record, but they are not technically your client. They're not. I know we all call them my client, but technically they are the client of the organization. The fact that your name shows up on things, I understand 100% how that now makes you feel uncomfortable about this situation, makes you feel like you are now responsible in this situation. But the bottom line is that, and you should try to do things to facilitate a good transition. You should try to do things that try to facilitate those clients being moved on to somewhere else, right? Because those things at the very least align with your personal values in most cases. Yeah. But that doesn't, right? But that does not necessarily mean that you are engaging in any kind of code violation. You're really not. You're not. And
so the last, sorry, the last comment, we're getting more comments. So, okay, so we would probably want to document that, document that the agency closed. Recommendation, like provide transition planning, and paperwork to people, which I think is kind of what we're about to touch on again. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you need to cut me off. So
okay, so why don't we go to the next one? Okay. Cool. Yes. So that's what we're about to get to, Sora. Okay. So this one says, your current job is not providing a level of support that you feel you need. Your work quality is decreasing. You want to leave, but you don't want to abandon your clients. Leaving might cause some services to be temporarily paused. Okay. Is leaving a code violation? What do you think? Great. Okay. We see this one a lot too. Yes. Leaving without a transition plan is a code violation. Yes. So provided that you have done all of the things that you need to do to transition, then no, it's not a code violation to leave your job. Yes, okay. Great. Okay, and I think we've touched on that already. Okay. Yeah, parameter. Okay, so parameters around helping with the transition. So, okay, so can you, yes. So you need to, like, you as the BCBA are documenting, you have documentation so that someone can take over for you. You're providing enough notice that someone can, like, that your company can provide another practitioner or make a plan for how to do that. Yeah, not, hey, can you stay for 3 more months after you were about to leave, because we haven't found anyone to replace you. Okay, what about if the BCBA supervisor does not permit the BCBA to inform families of their notice? Well, did you as the individual BCBA provide the agency with documentation and everything that they need to pick up your clients? I mean, that happens too. That's, unfortunately, that is a common situation where yeah, either you have to either you leave really quickly, or they won't let you talk about it, or like those things happen all the time. So those are not code violations for you. Those are values conflicts. Yeah, sure, yes. That too. Like I would tell, yeah, I really like this chat. I wasn't sure how the chat was gonna go with this when I heard that we had this many people. But I'm really liking this chat. So yeah, these things happen all the time, and these are not things that make you commit a code violation. They're things that violate your values. And show why you're leaving that job. Cool, yeah. All right. We have two of these left. So let's try to, this next one is kind of
This one
we see
should be a
this one a lot.
layup. Yeah, this
Yeah.
should be a layup.
We see this one a lot. So this one, well, we use, yeah, it pops up fairly often. So oh, we do have a question. All right, let's do this last. This is a good question, Barb. Are there ever situations where leaving abruptly is okay without transitioning? What do you think, Barb?
Are there ever situations where leaving is okay?
Like abruptly? Yeah, severe illness. Sorry, I'm reading chat and asking you at the same time.
No. Well, I mean, there are going to be situations,
Yeah.
right? And that's, but yes, I mean, if you were to have an emergency situation and things like that, obviously part of the solution to that is to have good ongoing documentation and so forth, so that if something happens, it is easy for someone else to pick up on where you are. So making sure that you're engaging in those professional behaviors that allow that to things to transition, because and honestly, something could happen at any moment that prevents you from providing services. So that is good professional behavior that you should be engaging in general, right? But that doesn't address like whether there's transitions and those sorts of things. If that's within an agency, that should fall to the agency to find ways to make that transition occur. So that's part of their job if that's their client.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
let's speed. I'm going to try to speed through this one. So your newest client is the child of the owner of your clinic. You are uncomfortable with this, but learn that the other BCBAs at your clinic have worked with this child in the past. Is this a code violation? Also, Dear boss, I plan to die in 3 weeks in the chat. I cannot. Okay. You're killing me. Okay. All right. Yep. Okay. Yes. This is very obviously a code violation. Dual relationship. All right. Okay. That one comes up a lot.
Surprisingly a lot.
A surprisingly lot. Cool. Let's go to the last one because we have things to do.
We have values work to do soon.
Yeah, we need to present our solution. Okay. So this one, your new client transferred to your company after their previous provider stopped accepting their insurance. When reviewing his previous treatment plan, you disagree with the last BCBA's approach and would like to change the direction of the case. Did the previous BCBA engage in a code violation? What do you think? Yep, not necessarily, right? It's a disagreement, right? Yep. Okay, cool. We see this a lot too. Do I need to tell the board because this person didn't do what I would have done? You are allowed to use your training and experience to inform treatment decisions, and different behavior analytic approaches to treatment are not necessarily a code violation. All right, so I think we're absolutely fine with identifying examples and non-examples of this. So let's move over to values.
Great, fantastic. Now, obviously, we've got with us tonight for the most part, an experienced and very well-trained group of people who've been in the field for a while. What we are seeing with some of the younger folks, though, and where some of all, in one of the things that's really triggered this is this discussion that we're seeing from folks that are maybe not well mentored and that are taught very rigidly and don't have a lot of experience with problem solving through things, and it's for those folks that, we need to make sure that they have many examples of inclusion and exclusion of what is a code violation, what's not a code violation, so that they can, begin to discern that for themselves. Folks like you who've demonstrated that you're very good at that are super important in passing that information along and helping people to make those kinds of identifications. And of course, being able to do that is only a first step, right? Because effective problem solving will also require the behavior analyst to recognize their own personal values. So let's do just a little bit of values work as well. We don't have time to devote tonight to some of the strategies that could be used to identify values. Now that would be a whole nother webinar. To specifically look only at that. But briefly, many of the tools that are available through ACT, if folks are familiar with the matrix, you can use matrixing to identify values. The mindful action plan of Moran and Siri Ming would be useful for that. The bullseye values survey, I'll let Kate talk about that in a minute if she wants. One of our favorite ones for that are the imagine your eulogy or your 80th, or to be less macabre, your 80th birthday party or your retirement party, right? What would you want people to say about you and your values, about who you were as a person? Right? Those things can help you to identify your values. You can also use self-reflection questions that are available from some sources, and I just listed two of them out very quickly. In the Humble Behaviorism Redux article that was published earlier this year by Kirby et al., there are some self-reflection questions there that can help to identify your values. There are many sources outside of behavior analysis. Believe it or not, there have been a whole bunch of other disciplines that have gone through a lot of what we're going through right now and have come up with some solutions to things. The one that I'm referencing here by Abramson is in social work. And in the title of it is Reflections on Knowing Oneself Ethically, right? So it's specifically lists out a whole bunch of self-reflection questions that you can use to identify your values, specifically those related to ethics. Right. Now, I did say we don't have time to go through a whole bunch of them, you know, like really deeply tonight, but Kate's going to lead you through a quick exercise on that you could help others go through as well.
Okay, we're gonna do this a little more quickly than I intended to. Let's see. I think you can write this down on your own, but I think what I'm gonna actually ask you to do, because we have such a good chat group going right now, is I would like you to use the chat for some of these prompts, so you can see what other people are, because we want people to share. So we're gonna take a little bit of time to write down some things that are important to us in a couple different areas of our lives. So can I get the next line? Cool. Okay. So let's start with our careers, since this is a professional group. What qualities do you want to have as a behavior analyst? What professional relationships do you want to develop? What kind of goals are you trying to reach? Think about those things, right? Like if you want to put like a short answer in the chat, go ahead. Let's just take a couple minutes. These are really good. Competent, compassion. I'm seeing a lot of compassion. Helping people grow towards their goals, not yours. I like that. Kindness, helpful, flexible. Be a helper like Mr. Rogers. Honesty. These are great. So, and when you pick your top 3, they're also different from other people's top 3s, right? I'm noticing like our short answers were kind of, we're taking what's most important. You're taking what's most important to you. Collaborative, peacefully productive. I like that. But we're all saying different things at the top, right? Okay, let's go. We're going to do 2 more of these. So the next one, your friends, your social relationships. You can include your family in this too, because this is a really short one tonight. So what are your most important social relationships? How do you want your friends to see you as a person? What parts of your social life are most important? Do you want to provide a really distilled answer in the chat? That would be great. Take a few minutes to do that. Ooh, incite good trouble. I like that too. Great, we're getting some answers here. Kind, open-minded, empathetic, positive influence, reliable. Same values in your professional and personal life. Okay. And some people, yeah, so we're all different. An ally, fun to be around. I'm just pulling like some things out of these. Great, loyal, dependable. You're okay, cool. Being a listener, being tenacious. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So a lot, and we're seeing a lot of people's professional values and behavior come from their personal values, and they're not separate. Excellent. Okay. Cool. So last, let's think quickly, like, what do you like to do for fun? And I'm guessing that for some of you, CE events may be part of that, but maybe not for others. So how do you spend your downtime? Yes, CE. What do you do to relax? And you don't have to say CE use. using alcohol. Okay. Shovel. Spend time with your family. Go outside. Awesome. So we all do different things. Cuddling your dog. Say hi to Carson for me. Awesome. Yeah, so we all have different, I mean, we all kind of have, like, we have things in common and we have things that aren't in common, and we should know what they are. I mean, I think that's kind of our point, is like, in addition to and we can go to the next slide. In addition to like having a really solid knowledge of the code of ethics and knowing what's in there and what isn't in there, we should know about our personal values. And if our personal values and our professional values are very, very the same, then great. And that's fine too. That may be true for you and it may not be true for you. I'm going to pass this back to Barb.
Fantastic. Thank you for that quick values exercise, Kate. I just want to say that we did spend some time talking about values, we do need to use some caution, right? If you say, well, that might be a code violation, but, and then invoke your personal values, you are entering some dangerous territory. You cannot allow personal values to supersede the code or laws, right? And so I want to just come back to that, circle back around and make sure that make sure that it's clear that that's not what we're advocating for, right? That by identifying your values, by separating out what's a code violation or what's just a personal ethic violation, does not then mean that we are free to choose the path of personal ethics over the code or any existing laws. It's also true that some of the current problem-solving models do help to navigate those kinds of situations. And there's a great summary of the problem-solving models in the new edition of the Byrne and Savoy ethics book. That said, there is still some room for refinement of how we go about doing that. I also want to acknowledge that we are changing in terms, in many, many ways as a field, right? And we avoided some of the more controversial places where those personal versus professional ethics might be coming into play recently, for example. But behavior analysts are recognizing and incorporating non-codified ethics into their practice and doing so more frequently. And if you have not used understanding ethics and applied behavior analysis practical applications in any of your work, if you teach, if you have not used that in teaching, I do encourage you to get a copy of that and take a look at it. It does do a very good job of starting to round out how we look at ethics in applied behavior analysis, and it takes many of these kinds of things into account as well. A very recent article, and so recent, like just this past week, by Suarez et al. I pulled this quote, and it's that dilemmas present as complex circumstances with specific and unique contextual variations that require nuanced assessment. The process of training behavior analysts to meet these demands is daunting, and I could not agree with that statement anymore, because we do need to have a very solid understanding of what are the enforceable aspects of our ethics, but we also need to have a very solid understanding of how to approach situations that we encounter, both with that as our foundation, but also in ways that are consistent with our personal values, and to be able to discern when each of those things and to what extent each of those things are at play in what we do. We did not leave very much time for Q&A, but you have been so interactive during various portions of this. But in the last minute or two, if y'all have anything to put in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, go ahead and do that. I don't have my chat open. That would help.
Okay, do you suppose the rigidity that we see in new BCBAs may be a function of peak shifts by ethics instructors, like highlighting controversial and unethical cases that are like extreme, shifting sensitivity towards classifying behavior that isn't a code violation that's unethical?
That's a really good question. And I mean, obviously that does, in some ways, those really controversial things, they present these what seem to be clear-cut sort of scenarios, right? And I'm hemming and hawing on this one because I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know we only have 3 minutes. So, but I think that it is yes, but in a sense that it isn't necessarily that when those kinds of examples are being used, that folks are actually spending any time separating out what is truly an ethical, a code violation. That see, I'm even trained to just call that an ethical violation. I'm a code violation versus, you know, what is a broader ethical violation. And because it is true that there are things that we may believe to be unethical in a broader sense, but that not necessarily is clear cut according to what's in code, or is the article by Sellers et al. Have discussed in that, and before that, Rosenberg and Schwartz, they discussed this idea that sometimes things seem to be in conflict in the code, right? And those kinds of, you know, like do no harm versus effective treatment maybe things that are coming into quote unquote conflict. But really, it's not just that, but it's a broader ethical thing that's triggering us about all that, right? So I do think that so yes, I think to answer your question, I think yes, but I think that's just because we're not presenting that in a nuanced enough way in terms of what it is that we're actually reacting to in those situations.
Then we have, could it be part of the beginner's bubble, where newer practitioners may show rigidity and overconfidence, kind of Dunning-Kruger.
Oh, that must be by Dr. Bartzold.
It is.
Oh, you know, I had to go there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Dr. Bartzold, that I would agree with you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we spend, I think that the amount of time that people have to learn how to do this job at the beginning is not necessarily enough for what companies and employers expect from them. And I think that that's kind of where we start to see these situations, because we have people who would benefit from more oversight and more training, but because they have a certification that shows that they're minimally competent to do something. And they can bill the same as everyone else. And I'm going to get a little controversial here, but then it doesn't matter to some people, like what kinds of, it doesn't really matter to some people, like what decisions they're making. And they don't give them a lot of guidance. And then people start to feel lost. So yes, and I was going to get to Sora next.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
That's part of it too.
Yeah. Yep.
We don't, and I think, and I also think that kind of the crunch that we have I think I see people who are feel very crunched for time for lots of different reasons to complete their certifications. And I think that that's where it's really hard to develop to develop critical thinking skills. I know Sora is talking about people not having learned them when they were younger as well, which I think that's part of it. Also, I think we assume that people come in with critical thinking skills, and a lot of people who are in our programs or who are completing field work or our newer BCBAs are very good implementers. They're not necessarily where they are right now because of critical thinking skills, and we don't teach them critical thinking skills. Okay.
Very true. I threw our final slide up there, which is our contact info. You're welcome to contact us, both to tell us how fantastic we are, but also how ridiculous we are, and with questions, of course. And I will be making the slides available to OER, of course, as part of this process. So if anyone would like those, I'm sure that they can reach out to OER or directly to us. So.
Yeah, critical thinking skills are not on the task list.
They are not.
I will end it there. Good. That's a really good point. Okay.
We will make sure that the slides and the recording are available through special interest groups. So if folks want to revisit this or utilize it in another way that's useful for them. Thank you so much for your time and thinking of us as a platform that could offer the opportunity to share this information. I know, as you shared before, you had intended to share it through a different platform, and we are delighted to have been able to scoop it up and share it on your behalf. So I thank you very much for that and for your time in preparing and delivering this today. Just a reminder in terms of certificates for folks about putting your first and last name in the chat, as well as both and completing the evaluation link that I posted a few times there as well. Again, we'd welcome you to join our special interest group. It's free to join. It'll put you on lists to get information about initiatives, cool things that are happening, opportunities to talk and engage with like-minded people, as well as opportunities for free continuing education. So thank you again. Let me go ahead and stop our recording.